Hi everyone, Tim from Classic Register here. This is a short video for the 1977 to 1978 Leyland Mini LS. Now this is the 998cc version of the car. These were available in several colours. Hi-Ho Silver, as you can see here, Nugget Gold, the same as the 1275 LS there, Iridium Green and Silver Blue. Exact production numbers of these cars aren't really known. We're still trying to find out that information, and if anyone has any good sources, please let us know. The purpose of this guide is to go through all the features of the car and provide essentially a bit of a backup to our written ID guide, which you can see on screen now. Having a look at the front of the car now, the first thing you'll notice are the integrated fog lights. Now these are a Marshall brand light. We've got a better example up here of an original one. They have these gold cat face badges in them. Most of them have fallen out, of course, and in this case they've fallen out of this car. But originally they had these gold cat face badges. On the back you'll see the brand, which is Marshall, made in France. Obviously you'll notice the LS badge at the front, as well as the underwriters beneath the bumper bar. These are all standard features on the LS. Coming up to the roof line, you've got your standard LS aerial. Now the roof on the 998 LS is where you get a lot of problems. Coming around the back of the car here, you can see the entire gutter has rusted out. The reason for this is that the 998 LSs were fitted with vinyl roofs. This ended up being a bit of a disaster. It did look great, and it still does look great when they're done. But unfortunately, because it holds the water, the Mini roof doesn't take too kindly to it, and you do get a lot of rust around the gutters, and of course this car does need a lot of work in that respect. Particularly bad rust on the back corner there, and the entire edge of the gutter missing. This is definitely a thing to look for on the 998 LS. They would have all originally had vinyl roofs, so you need to be careful that these have been dealt with. Having a look down the side of the car now, there are a couple of features that are applicable to the 998 LS. Obviously the side stripes. On the 998 they say Mini LS, as opposed to the 1275 LS, which says 1275 LS. The flare support panels, of course, these are same as applied to the 1275 LS, the Mini S, Club and GT, etc. These are spot welded to the mudguard. Now the wheels on the 998 LS are unique. They're a 5 by 10 inch wheel. On the 998 LS they got away with 10 inch because they didn't put disc brakes on these cars. The reason they put 12 inch on the 1275 LS was because they had larger 8.4 inch disc brakes which would not fit within these wheels. These wheels, they're fairly rare these days. Unfortunately these aren't in great condition because someone's used them for racing and has got slick tyres on them. But they've got Leyland centre caps originally. They're an ROH wheel, and if you have a look at our link to the written ID guide now on screen, you'll see the various identification markings that you need to look for on these particular wheels. Coming around to the back of the car now, and like the 1275 LS, you'll notice there is a slight green tint to the glass on the 998 LS. You can also see the heating elements for the rear windscreen demister. So that's unique to the LS. It was a high-spec model and had these additional features. Unlike the 1275 LS, the 998 got the standard size tank, or the non-European tank. By the time they did the 1275 LS, they brought in a bigger tank, bigger engine, which obviously helps with range. The rear of the car, in this case we can't see it, I'm sorry, there is an LS badge on the rear boot as well. Similar style to the 1275 LS you can see over there, but obviously without the 1275 on top of the LS badges. So moving into the engine bay here, and of course this is where some of the important codes are located. I won't go into too much detail here about the chassis numbers because we've got all those details listed on the ID guide, on the written ID guide, which you can see a link to on screen now. But essentially Leyland changed their prefixes in 1978, and because this is a 1978 model, which you can see by the date on the compliance plate, they moved to a prefix of XNFAB18Y, slightly different to the 1275 LS prefix of XNFAD18Y. There are other prefixes, of course, that applied in 1977 to these cars, which we've gone through in more detail in the written ID guide, and you can have a look there at what those are. Importantly, the number, or the chassis number and prefix that's written there, should also apply to the top of the radiator shroud. You'll see it stamped in there with the equivalent or the same chassis number stamped next to it. Moving on to the engine number of the car. Now the engine number is located on top of the engine block where it meets the head on the passenger side of the engine at the front. There's a small flat area here you can see, and the engine number is stamped into that. In this case it's 99H889 as the prefix. That's a very standard 998cc engine prefix from the late 1970s. Unfortunately there's no way of actually confirming whether or not the engine is an LS engine. They were exactly the same as other 998 engines applied to other Minis in the Leyland Mini range at the time. Of course, we had the ADR compliant pollution gear, 1.25 SU carburetor, and everything else is essentially the same as another Leyland Mini, including at the late 1970s. They also had these silver painted rocker covers that also applied to the 1275 LS as well. Alright, moving into some of the interior features of the car. This particular car being a hi-ho silver car, like the 1275 LS, it had the sort of red corduroy style trim on black vinyl, and you can see the black vinyl door cards, and that's the sort of trim that applied throughout the car. On the Nugget Gold version, it had the same interior as, or similar interior to the 1275 LS in Nugget Gold, that being a brown or chocolate corduroy trim on cream vinyl door cards. The blue cars, silver blue cars, had sort of a silvery blue polka dot finish, and some examples of that trim are given in the written ID guide. Green cars, iridium green cars, had sort of a cream coloured similar pattern to the blue cars, but in a creamy white. Looking at the dash here, you've got the radio. The types of radios varied, and we've gone into some detail with that in the ID guide, in the written ID guide, and also of course having fog lights on the front. You've got your fog light switch here, as well as the rear demister. You've got a triple gauge dash, being a 77-78 model. It's got the two brake fail warning light and park brake light, as well as the Formula GT steering wheel. Well, that's about it for the 998 LS. We'll try and do a better video later on, as well as with a car that's a bit more complete than this. If you've got any comments, or if you have any more information you think could be useful for the ID guide, just give us an email or contact us through the website, and we'll make the amendments if we find any extra information. Thanks for watching.